Hi there, Agile friends. Get ready for the World Tour of Agile at the Agile Online Summit 2023. You can join us from October 24th to 26th for a global showcase of cutting-edge Agile practices and insights. Join us at agileonlinesummit.com. This year, we will be featuring some of the best work done around the world and world-class keynotes. You can check all of that at agileonlinesummit.com. But the best part is that your ticket is on us. That's right, it's free to attend and immerse yourself in the world of Agile excellence. Don't miss out on this opportunity to level up your skills and network with peers and industry experts. Mark your calendars and secure your spot at AOS 23 today by visiting agileonlinesummit.com. So get your free ticket or opt for the full digital pass that lets you keep all the conference videos forever and organize, why not, Agile learning sessions at work. You can get the full digital access at agileonlinesummit.com. I'll see you in the conference floor. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday, the Leading Change episode this week with Seye Kuyinu. Hey, Seye, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
So on Wednesdays, of course, we talk about change and change leadership, as I like to call it, because after all, we as Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, and also sometimes as team members, we are involved with change all the time. Sometimes it's a personal change, other times it's a team level change, might also be an organizational level change. Whatever the story is, do tell us that story, Seye, and walk us through the steps that change process went through. And as you go through those steps, highlight for us the tools, the tips, the tricks, and the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
All right. Quite recently, I started working with this organization here locally in Jacksonville. And one of the things that I noticed was there seemed to be, for a lot of the development teams, there seemed to be a lack of cohesion within those teams. Usually my process is always starts with, assessing the processes. Right. And what I did was in this particular situation was to sit down with, two of the teams that I worked with and, just understand the way they work. And one of the things that I noticed was within this organization, they had like a vendor. They were working with a vendor that had individual team members from their own side working within this other team. And so it felt like you had two teams in one. So the team members from the vendor side had their own way of working, and the team members from this local side had their own way of working. And so
there were two teams or one team?
There were. It was a team that had two factions, and those factions were created because one of the factions had. They were employers from this vendor team. So it was easy to see that they were operating as separate groups within that one group. And obviously, just in assessing that, I could see how their processes were also falling apart. So as a good example, because this vendor team had their own internal meetings that were separate from this other meeting. They were already overworked or overbooked in their own schedules. And so when we had team level meetings from this company that they were contractually obligated to, they weren't very, very present in those meetings to even hear, because there was a lot of meeting overload. So obviously, like my first process is always the first step to me getting in a setup like that is to assess the current process Then to get into the pain point, obviously I started to notice that there were loads of meetings. I started to see that a lot of the meetings were bloatware. They could be structured in a different way. The third thing that I had to do was to understand the goals. And goals are one of the things that are less talked about, even though they are the most obvious things. So I started to see that while there seemed to be this one overarching goal, it was interpreted differently depending on who was looking at it. So if you're in the project management team, you saw the goal as one thing. If you're within the product team, you saw it as a different thing. And the teams didn't even understand what the goals were. They were just doing the work. So for me, one of the things that I did was, obviously by the time I assessed all of this, usually I have Arlo Belshee's Agile Fluency map that I use to guide the journey to see where each team is and or where the team is, where the organization is, and then map that to the nearest win or the nearest thing that they have to do, and the gap in between that would allow me to be able to uncover the next step for those teams. So obviously, a lot of these times, a lot of these situations, one of the things you begin to see is maybe we need to start from a working agreement. Are there any working agreements? You see that some of these teams and some of these groups have a working agreement. Okay, when last did you revisit this working agreement? Oh, yeah, sometime last year with our last Agile coach. Well, this should be a live document. This is something that we should always refer back to. So I find this, going through the working agreements with these groups almost always helps. Then being able to visualize the process together with everybody also always helps with change. And what I started to see is, obviously, within the short period I was with this in this engagement, there seemed to have been a shift, from, if I used Arlo Belshee's visuals here of Agile Fluency, you could see that, they started as maybe a pseudo team to a team that sits together. Even that small shift was something, just because they could visualize this, even that small shift looked like a really big achievement for the organization. And I find when we see ourselves being able to come into an engagement and, get people to buy into their own change, it feels like it's the number one thing that anybody should consider.
Yeah. How did you do that at that time? So you did the assessment, maybe you found some stuff. How did you help the team get the buy-in for whatever was the next step? Using Arlo Belshee's Agile Fluency map, I also set up like a team coaching canvas, that shows, what the work looks like, what are backlogs, what do the backlogs look like, what are your processes within the team, how do we do we have our definition of done created, do we have an understanding of a team charter, then I go and assess and make observations and put my sticky notes, ask questions and all of that. And at some point I share my findings with whether the team or the organization itself, to say, this is what I noticed and this is where we are and this is what we need to do to get here. And these are the enablers, so I show them more or less their own journey. Absolutely. And showing that journey allows us to have many different conversations. And exactly. The great thing from a change perspective is that it's the conversations the teams are ready to have, right? Exactly. Like you can show them the map, but what triggers in them is coming from them. And they bring to the table their own perspective on what the journey needs to be or could be.
Exactly. In fact, one of the first things I tell anybody I work with, any organization, teams, executives that I work with, is I do not own change. The change is collective. So if I notice things, even if I see that you're hitting your head against the wall, my job is to show you what I'm seeing and then find out together with you if it's a pain point. If it's a pain point, I may have suggestions, you may have suggestions, but we change together. We walk through that change together. And I find that way when people feel like they identified or they made the change, it feels more it feels more they feel there's more alignment in that than me telling them, oh, this is what you should do, this is what I noticed, this is what you should do, and then move here. Let's own the change collectively.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no other way, right? Jason Little calls it co-creating change, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story, Seye.
Yeah, thank you.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.